Now it is my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Mahdi Merai, CEO of JetScale AI, presenting Bridging the Gap, How Academia Can Better Align with Industry Needs. Dr. Mahdi is a Montreal-based entrepreneur and artificial intelligence expert who currently serves as the CEO of JetScale AI. Dr. Mahdi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very honored to see this energy. This is fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. It's the first time I'm in Doha, by the way. First time in Qatar. Very impressed by the energy. Very impressed by the vision. And you know, I like it earlier. I heard Dr. Salam, you mentioned the sentence, the harmony between theory and practical. I think, and I was thinking on what's the best way to introduce this subject. And I was thinking about my daughter. I have a daughter, like she's 4 years old. And I see like the difference between trying to explain her some, instruction and giving her the chance to try it by herself. And the learning and this velocity of the learning is impressive on that. Today we will speak about a subject that have a small, maybe few know about it, like they hear about it. It's called artificial intelligence. Anybody heard about that? So, the good news, when I started working on AI, I didn't believe that today we will have this massive disruption coming from this technology. And I myself thought, for example, that generative models, which is like ChatGPT and all, it's something that's never gonna work. So this is what's interesting about science. Science is also about experience, and that's why it's super important to bridge that gap between theory and practice. So today we have 3 topics. The topic number 1, I want to tell you a story about my personal journey on the AI, and I want to share with you how the field evolved. And the most important thing, I want to focus on the key driver and levers that every time make the changes. The reason for that, it helps us to better predict the future and better be part of it. On the second topic, we are speaking about students that are aspiring for jobs of the future. What's interesting what's happening with artificial intelligence now, there is a lot of jobs that we don't know about, that will be created. But we need to prepare these students to be able to navigate somehow a known environment and to be able to deploy soft skills, critical thinking, to be able to embrace this type of technology. And number 3, I want to speak about ecosystems. And I will get you some humble observation from my journey in North America, Silicon Valley as well, and what makes it the success, for example, of Silicon Valley, but also what are the key features that could be an inspiration to basically to have and build our own models. There is a small delay. We need an AI for that. We can, okay, sounds good. Let's try, no. By the way, speaking of that, I used to tell when I meet clients sometimes and all, there is 2 inventions that still didn't happen to work it well, presentation systems, and meeting systems. Until now, it's the biggest mystery of university. So, yes, absolutely. So, we'll try to handle that, no problem. My personal career on AI started on 2015. And every date here is an important date in the history of artificial intelligence. And I will explain a little bit like where we are at each time. So when I started in artificial intelligence, we already start seeing some promising like results. And at the time we were speaking about deep learning. So what I have done preparing this presentation, I went to Google Trends and I seen like the level of interest of the global, like generally, this is like all countries on artificial intelligence. And I've seen where myself were landed there. So I landed in 2015. I finished my master's degree at UCAM, and I started my PhD on deep learning. AI in 2015, it was mainly focused on large companies that were trying to solve their own problems. So we have search engines like Google trying like to predict what the user is looking for. We had, let's say, the early stage of the Amazon of today trying like to predict the user like consumption, the trends, the categorization, and etc. And it was used a lot by universities. And speaking of university was, and the academia world, was the only world who can basically, support the cost of like artificial intelligence. It needed, thank you so much. Let's try this one. So it needed a lot of investment to be able to discover and observe like the results and to be able to think about use cases. In artificial intelligence and in many fields, there is always a challenge between designing new system based on a specific industrial needs, or sometimes designing a new capability and go look, discover, and see like new applications. And this is like basically the world of artificial intelligence was oscillating between that. So university brought the right capability, the right theory to establish and to test like ideas around artificial intelligence. But at that time, the technology itself was inefficient. So for most of the use cases that people are expecting for. And also it was very unknown from the public. So the cycle was the following. In 2015 and 2017, there is a dynamic of an ecosystem that was built, started mainly in California, that helped shaping the artificial intelligence of today. So basically, I took an example of Google. Google at the time, big user of artificial intelligence, and the only type of use cases where it makes sense to invest millions of dollars to improve results. So they open sourced it and they made available to universities and for students tools that help them to improve like their research, to help them like to do better discoveries. From the other hand, the result of that, universities start developing more capable AI models, more available like for Google, by the way, but for every like company in the industry on the ecosystem. And the government was playing a role of enablement and funding. And this dynamic created what we have today in artificial intelligence. Another example I want to tell about. One of the tools called TensorFlow. Anybody like here from the IT technology? Okay. Anybody knows about TensorFlow? Oh, great. I'm glad. So anything we built at the time when I was doing my PhD was extremely painful. It was super hard. It takes, the cycle took months to run any type of experiment. So when Google open sourced like a technology like TensorFlow, it helped like everybody to improve and to basically publish faster and getting faster result, and then like having other researchers like improving my work and all. And this has created this first dynamic between academia and industry. Industry enabling students and researchers, researcher improving like the value that of the fundamental learning. Another use case from the other end is ImageNet. Anybody knows the ImageNet here? Okay, great. ImageNet was the reverse part, where the university provided the right data, open source it, for researchers, but also for industry. And this helped basically companies to build what we know now with face recognition and computer vision. Because at the time, most of the models, they were enabled to be tried and experimented simply because there is no available data. And university was the only place that could invest in such project that didn't first have any commercial lens, but after that, the coupling between like the interests of the academia of the discovery and the commercial interests of the private sector created like something that we have today, which is like anything we use in our phones and many more. So I call it that phase in AI the algorithmic area. In the algorithmic era, we were developing like powerful AI models with impressive capabilities, comparably like to the existing needs at the time. We start seeing more economically viable like applications where the lower cost of hardware, you hear about NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is always like pushing like that limit, allows to students, researchers, but also private sector to try and experiment much more like this type of models. But the challenge was there is a depth in terms of knowledge that most of the companies didn't have, but university had. It can be seen also as an opportunity, and this is where I started my first company. At the time I was doing my PhD, I was a student, and companies were starting approaching me as a student to try to help them like to solve specific industrial problems. I got approached by a company called Autodesk. I don't know if anybody knows Autodesk? Yeah, that they do like the 3D and CAD. And they had a major problem where they want to automate 3D generating like the 3D like artifacts and all. I was a student, I didn't have a company, I never built any company, but I've seen that opportunity. I've seen the opportunity to build a bridge between the demand from companies like Autodesk, but then and the supply, which is the knowledge that I had at the time. And this is what I call the deep learning gold rush, where there is a big disconnect between the available, like very low number of technologies and the need of banks, insurance, technology company, government, and all. And there is an entire industry that was built to fulfilling that type of needs. I was in Montreal, and Montreal was a global hub for AI. So one of the founder of the models that we use today is Yoshua Benju, who is a professor that I respect a lot. And they set in stone like everything that we are using today and make it available again like for the entire world because of the academic mission. So the university was providing the labs. We can experiment. Earlier we were speaking about private sector allowing to researchers and various like creators to experiment. And finally, we needed a space where we can motivate and catalyze ideas between students and practitioners and all. So we created what we call the Deep Learning Montreal. It started as a small group, but it ended up with 3,000 members worldwide. And we do like entire events where we meet all together and explain the latest like development in terms of AI. I built my first company called Data Performers because of that need. And we've seen tremendous growth very quickly. It was my first, let's say, professional experience. And I find myself as a student being a CEO of a company where I never worked in a company myself, like except of capstones projects and projects like internships in Microsoft and many more. But this is the beauty of experiential learning, where basically we are in a situation where improving trying is not an option. And it was the best gift I had from the destiny by doing that. So we were offering deep learning systems for telco companies, banks, aviation. And we ended up providing like that knowledge that we had and that we captured from the university, but make it in a systematic way. So companies can find a way to consume it and like for their systematic needs, basically. We learned how to not just operate that academic knowledge, but also how to operate it at scale, which is the key that made the success of Data Performers at the time. So companies and businesses, they are focused much more in the short term. Bigger companies, they can focus on the long term because they have that mission, but in the same time, like the possibility to do it. So we helped the company at the time getting like merging like the need of future development, but short-term research and development R&D. And we ended up providing deep learning system to the biggest companies of this world. Autodesk, Toyota, Government of Canada, multiple agencies. And we helped them basically to create various deep learning systems in the banking, in the robotics, and many more. In 2020, the AI started evolving. And this dynamic between the academic world and the public sector start maturing. And when this merge mature, we start seeing what we call productization. Products. The market start to be like ready for repeatable use cases. And the universities are trying now to have applied science rather than fundamental science. So from the AI perspective, the Google, the Microsoft Azure, AWS with Amazon, starting, having the ownership of the tools that deliver AI to a wider audience than just researchers. And at the time, we needed basically a system that goes beyond just like research and development, but create what we call like a product. And I call that the AI productization rush. We move it from a case-by-case result into something much more repeatable, and then we start seeing like the emerge of an AI industry rather than just a software industry. At the time, we had the chance to work with Toyota, and I can give you an example of the use case. Toyota was developing systems to recognize defects in the weldings in their factories in Yokohama and Japan. The challenge was, it was done manually. There is like a group of humans that needs to be 9 hours front of different computer systems, watching images from cameras and try to detect defects. Because humans are humans, humans get tired. Humans get sometimes influenced like by, a bad day, for example. So the results are directly impacting like the quality of the production. So we build a system that can do that automatically, and in the era of the AI productization, we moved from a service company, an R&D company, into a product where there is an intellectual property on that. And in 2021, my company got acquired by Deloitte. And I moved from a researcher to a first-time CEO to a first-time equity partner within Deloitte. And I ended up like co-leading a team of 650 person in a company of 14,000 person and practitioner on artificial intelligence. And this, as students, researchers, it helped me like to see how I can lead and deliver large-scale AI projects, which is basically, at the time, it was super sophisticated comparably like to the levers that we have today that we can use. And the industry of the AI moved again from R&D and products into what we call accelerators. Now there is tools, and the focus is much more like on the applied science and the application, much more into then like the fundamental of artificial intelligence. And I had the chance to contribute to the first wave of productization within Deloitte and to start moving into creating entire companies based on AI systems at the time. Okay, sorry. Still dealing with that, by the way. Here we go. Thank you. Anybody use ChatGPT? Yeah? Another unknown technology, by the way. For the fun fact, in 2015, when I started my PhD, I asked my mentor and professor, Jai Wan Yu, to suggest me any topic that could be interesting. So he recommended me to speak to one of the researchers of University of Montreal, who is now the leading of AI development at Apple, and Ian Goodfellow. And I spoke to Ian Goodfellow, who created the first paper that ChatGPT is using today. And he showed me like his first paper was like 2014, I remember. And he told me, if you want to improve that system, you're more than welcome. Start studying that, did the first attempt, we did the first implementation, and then said, okay, the best result that we can get are, you know, random pictures that are not clear and things like that. I said, okay, this never gonna work. And the rest is history. So, and this is like the beauty of the research and development. Like, it needs like people to believe deeply on things that are sometimes in the short term, it's super hard to stick to it. But thanks like to Ian Goodfellow and many more, like we have today tools that everybody can use and helps like everybody like on their journey. So in 2023, sorry, we've seen like the era of the agentic AI. And we've seen companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and many more commercializing that. I will not give a lesson on the way technically it works, but the beauty of that is it used to be a system to work on language. And then we discovered that we can capture the entire universe knowledge on just by language. And that's why like ChatGPT used to be a linguistic tool first. And then we ended up being able to generate images, videos, ideas, financial statements, and many more. And we are, for the first time, in a historical moment where we've seen what we call the AI first generation. When I say AI first, it means you should think that every tool that you are using today, every workflow that's designed like for different companies, academia, and many more, everything gonna be completely reimagined within this capability. And to give you a sense the way it works here, it's very simple. So in an industry of agentic AI, we need people that provide the infrastructure. It's like we are in a city, someone needs to provide the roads, the electricity. And these are today the cloud providers, the AWS and many more. And we've seen also an interest from different governments to establish like sovereign clouds, to have the ownership of this kind of models. The second layer, that we see in there, is the foundational model that was developed by OpenAI, but also universities that helped like establishing this type of models. And it created the opportunity for people to create different applications. And we have seen entire companies that was built by leveraging like these available models that the academic world builds. And finally, like we have the user interface that can allow like the traction from the individual consumer or other company. You've seen on the right context engineering. Anybody have an idea what is that? No? IT folks? So it's interesting that you hear sometimes that it's become the more hard to innovate in AI. The models were developed already. Most of the use cases are already, let's say, got captured by existing like private companies and all. But the most important unique thing in every AI application is what we call the context. And let me give you an example of that. If I want to build the best application for oncology, for example, who can provide the best like knowledge and who can design the best application on oncology here? Is an oncologist. And this is like basically what universities now are gonna focus. We are shifting from designing and innovating like core knowledge in artificial intelligence into more application, where we help students that have depth into a specific domain to contribute into this new generation of application that are AI based. They need to help like engineers to design it the right way because they have this type of know-how. And when I worked at Deloitte my first year, I moved from co-leading like the AI practice into building companies. And this is a shift in the private sector now. Companies and large groups, they have this opportunity to create ventures. Like we've seen like incubators originally started, for example, at universities. And now we are seeing internal type of incubators to spin off products, to spin off like a better portfolio of revenue, thanks like to ideas. So I had that chance to work on different, let's say, companies that ended up public today. So I worked on Dilo and many more. And I helped like Deloitte moving from a service company to own an intellectual property and to be able to own something that's sustained beyond one single project here. And finally, the final phase here is the agentic AI. And what's interesting about agentic AI is we are moving from a system that is trapped into that small window of ChatGPT into a system that can act. And this changed dramatically everything because we are moving from an information system into an assistant that can basically automatically like execute a sequence of actions. At a certain moment, we can delegate complex type of tasks. So the opportunity for students now, again, is still on the context engineering to bring their know-how, but rather than to build or to advise on AI system, but to build AI agents that are capturing their know-how and basically can apply like to different business cases here. And basically that's the story of my new company, JetScale. I left Deloitte to create a new agentic AI company with a venture capitalist from North America. And we basically start building the first AI cloud engineer. And the whole idea is we know a lot about the tasks that annoys the cloud engineers and prevent them to deliver more, and we automate it through AI, agentic AI, through different agents here. So how we deploy like the skills today? And I've seen a code that I really like it here. So the CEO of Google and Alphabet said, I think AI is going to be bigger than the internet. There are going to be companies, products, categories created that we aren't aware of today. And I think he's totally right on that. I started my speech on the challenge that all academia will have is to try to prepare students for a future that we somehow don't know a lot about. So how to prepare someone to navigate something unknown? And this is like the importance of that university gave beyond anybody else, which is like the critical thinking. Solving problems, no matter the problem, and being able like to apply it from a domain to another. So the agentic AI redefined pretty much everything today and will do more in depth in the coming months or even years. So the private sectors has to redefine the entire workflows. If I own a company of construction, for example, my entire processes has to be rethought simply because there is a lot of automation that could happen. New decision support systems. On the startup and entrepreneurship, think about all the possibilities, all like the new companies that has to exist and all this opportunity to capture that. And what I love about AI revolution, like any revolution, it gives a chance for new players to play. It gives a chance to new countries to shine. It gives a chance like to students to be like people like Sam Altman or Elon Musk and many more. And finally, on the academia, it will first impact a lot the way we deliver the information. But also, AI gonna be an assistant for the researchers. It's gonna accelerate that journey. And if a student will ask you, where I will fit here? And this is the answer. You can, if you are in the IT, you can build AI agents. If you are a designer, you can build the experience. If you are an engineer, you can design an entire application. If you are a doctor, you can still help. You can build and help on the context. And for the history and for the story, there is a space for everybody. Because we are in the rare moment where we see a new multi-vector type of technology like the internet. So the next step here, sorry, there is a small delay, trying to deal with it. Where we are going. And I think the next wave of technology here gonna be a bottom-up technology. Let me explain you like the thinking around like ecosystems and top-down and bottom-up. Anybody was in the Silicon Valley once or two times? Do you think Silicon Valley was built or designed in a top-down or bottom-up approach? Top-down, it means someone that thought about an entire plan, established an ecosystem, and then there is companies like Google and Microsoft that was created. Or is it the reverse? Any vote? Who say top-down? Who say bottom-up? It's exactly bottom-up. And this is, I think, it's important even to communicate to students about this reality. Do not wait for an ecosystem to be built to be part of it. You are the ecosystem. Like Google didn't start it because there is Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley didn't exist. Google started in a research lab in Stanford, became super popular, and basically inspired the first employee to work for them. And the first employee made experience and created other companies. And those companies become what we call the Silicon Valley and this type of ecosystem. My objective is to give you a sense on how I think, modestly, we can build ecosystems of innovations here. So, the bottom-up approach, it means government, public institution, university, set the stones and the environment for innovation. It enable students, it enable like young professional to innovate. It encourage them. And we will see like the first generation of success. Many companies will be built, some will fail, and the few that will succeed will become a big company. They will develop an entire knowledge around them. And it will create like this first like inspiration for other companies like to do the same, but also experience, which is unique, and helps like future entrepreneur like to create other companies and to create like the future Google, the future Microsoft, the future OpenAI. So I've been part of what we call a venture studio. Now, the good news, there is already recipes to run that. We don't need to try and hope. There is today a systematic and scientific way to create that. I have been like lucky to be part of it 2 times. One at Deloitte when I co-created like Deloitte Venture, but also at Diagram, which is like our VC that helped us to do that. And result of that, the way it works is we take unverified, let's say, venture thesis. Think about a student who works on a subject. That student, we help them to connect with companies, public sector, to quickly verify their thesis. Is it something that the industry needs? It will probably give them feedbacks. So they will end up like building a V2, V3, V5, until they get like a mature idea. Then we have a promising venture. And that promising venture fit basically is fitted with a team of founders. The first team that make that from paper and an idea into an entire company. And the whole idea, the way it works is we ship an MVP, we get feedback from the industry until we end up with an entire company. In the same program I was in, last week, our peers from Wealthsimple is valued at $10 billion US. And the next one is JetScale, where I am now. And we hope like we do better, I think. And this is basically the dynamic of building an ecosystem. And I believe it's something that not the university will bring, but literally everybody. Thank you so much. Any question? Yeah? Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for sharing your experience. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions for you. I teach agentic AI in cybersecurity, and I have a hard time in terms of implementation. So
Yes.
any hint in how to bring agentic AI into the classroom? And my second question is, what's your take on the Internet of Models?
Alternative model in what sense, just to be sure?
In terms of agentic.
Okay, sounds good. So, I think again, we are in a time where there is a lot of experimentation. Most of agentic AI and the AI industry now is breaking the typical scientific rules where we build the fundamentals we do applied science, we collect result, and we improve. It started to be like things that where the cycle moved from 2 to 3 years into like a cycle of a month. So everything now we do it literally like through one, doing an experience and making like sharing the public results, which help like to collect very quickly like the feedback. And on the second question on alternative models is, one of the challenge today of agentic AI, there is like a cost related like to training like a first model that somehow discard a lot of players. So for example, if I want to build another ChatGPT, it's somehow hard because it takes a lot of investment that many like universities and researchers doesn't have, basically. However, I heard like the very last time, like 3 months ago, they started working onto like smaller alternative models that have like similar type of results. So that's why I still think in the coming year, we'll see like a much open approach where companies, governments, and even universities that have a decent, let's say, infrastructure can build like a world competitive type of models. I'm pretty much sure it's a possibility. Thanks. Any other question?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just had an observation, and I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
So in general, when you mentioned AI revolution, and you also mentioned that we don't really know what's coming because not only is moving real fast, but there's also a lot of unknown.
Yes.
So listening to that all over the world, everybody's kind of saying similar things. I think the point is it feels like we have not learned anything from history as a human, because up until the 17th century, there was an agricultural revolution, and we learned that, you know, it works well up to a certain point,
Yes.
and then it leads to all types of different problems. So then in the 1700s and all the way up to the 1900s, we went into the Industrial Revolution. And we know how that ended as we kind of almost led ourselves to an existential crisis for this whole planet, the way we did it, not necessarily the actual intent, but how it got out of hands. Now, fast forwarded, even in the 2000s, internet was the revolution, right? And now everything happens in our society, in our homes, in our offices. We blame it on the internet because it got out of hands. I think at this point, we are again at a stage in history where we are showing the lack of foresight at how this is going to end. And I think academia itself, so industry is always going to be for profit. If they don't see the money, they're going to not do it. Academia is more about intellectualism. We should try and aim for not just students who can fit into the industry environment, but they're also intellectual elites who will speak up when they're part of that system and say, this is wrong, this should be stopped, or we should change it. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on it.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, thanks for the comment, and I agree on the part of, you know, the particular challenge that AI brings in terms of disruption. We were lucky in the Industrial Revolution that disruption took almost 100 years to happen. Now, the disruption is a matter of few years. By the way, we forgot that the public version that ChatGPT is used today is just 2 years. So imagine what happened in 5 years. And I agree with you on the depth of the disruption. It can create a lot of concern. But at the same time, it can create a lot of possibilities. like the Industrial Revolution, you know, and like the web, the level of improvement that the humanity in general that have is incomparable like to the 18th centuries. The level of comfort that every person who have access to is incomparable. I've been here thanks to the internet. And this is like basically the lens of that. But also, humans learned also like from the history. I've been part, like Dr. Yoshia Benju, one of the creator of the modern machine learning and AI. He's leading like an ethic AI group that have real power and impact, even in the private sector, to basically build AI in a safe way. To prevent, for example, AI use cases where there is biases, where there is discrimination, where there is like a harm for human. But humans still have that curiosity. Human can't stop innovate, and that's why like this is always a battle, a balance. But I feel that probably this time we have a chance like to do it in a better way. Dr. Salem.
Well, thank you very much for this. Is really inspiring presentation. Question from two parts, and you know, you as just taking your experience and how you have evolved as a research student into who you are today. How do you see the time frame for our student to move in this, route? Because it is really all about time sense, especially if you want to come from a student as a researcher into commercialization. So that is the question number one. The second one is, how do you see the recipe for university to move into that roadmap? Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Salem. Two great questions. In my case, I've did that transition where there is no systematic way to evolve from a researcher to an entrepreneur to a CEO. The good news today, more than more, like there is recipes. There is recipes that somehow could be adapted, and because we created like now a way like to keep the student interest by the research, but in the same time being able like to commercialize their IP. In my case, for example, my first paper that I wrote with Dr. Jaiwan Yu, we turned that paper into a patent. And now it's an international patent on AI and energy prediction. And the university provided, for example, an IP office. There is an IP office that have some ownership. I gladly gave 15% ownership to the university as a contribution, because the university like allowed me to have like the research, allowed me like to have like the material and all. But at the same time, the university helping me to commercialize it through like their experts. And as a student, I didn't have access to a patent lawyer, for example. So it helped like that commercialization. The second, on the second part of the question, because of like, from research to application now, it's way faster than 10 years ago. I've seen literally the potential now to move from an idea to a real company or a startup in 6 months. When I started JetScale AI, the venture capital diagram gave me 3 months to assemble a team and to deliver the first results. So there is a possibility to build a structure that helps like researchers and students to navigate the commercialization, to navigate like that shift from like fundamental know-how and fundamental knowledge domain into like all the challenges that an entrepreneur will face, all the challenges that a CEO will face on organizing the company. And this is like an opportunity to build a sort of like to reinforce like the incubation, which is like universities now is better place for that. And one of the examples that I really like there is a reason again why Silicon Valley exists specifically around Palo Alto and more. It's simply because of you know, Stanford University. Stanford University had the researchers. They built the first companies. So they took a rent or bought a home nearby, and it created an entire ecosystem. I think we have that chance today to build like AI focused, for example, type of incubation, 100%. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, for this very interesting presentation. My question focuses on this perception that AI is superpower or something, everything is accurate. I have documented evidence of errors in ChatGPT. I can show them to you. So my question to you really about, I want you to comment on the ethical issues in terms of accuracy, accountability, and non-bias. Yes. Thank you very much.
For sure. First of all, I agree. I totally agree on that. The beauty of systems like ChatGPT, I can give you some context, like, because the person who advised me when I started my PhD, he was the 4th person working in OpenAI. So I had some context on how it works. It was an internal experimentation, and it never been planned to be a product. It was an experimentation where the result was impressive, and they realized that, you know what? Should we just give it in the hand of the common of the mortals and see the feedbacks? And this has helped a lot to improve the models, because we've been able to see like feedbacks and going beyond like the research lab like type of experimentation to a humanity scale type of experiment. I think, you know, remember, these technologies evolve in an exponential way. The version of ChatGPT 6 months ago is probably like not 2 times better than a year ago. It's probably like 400 times and many more. And there is more and more way like to improve what we call the AI alignment. So you will have like systems that is aligned with like humanity common kind of values and ethicals. For sure there is a need like for guardrails, and more and more in the private sector, even in the public sector, like they are asking like provider to provide it, and they are working on that. So it's a matter of time. I believe that in less than 2 years, we'll have very high level type of accuracy type of AI. Time will show us this. Yes.
So before we go to the questions from the QR code, we have one last question from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for such an inspiring talk on your area of expertise. I'm from health discipline, and our focus primarily is on safety, so patient safety, etc. So AI is beneficial in so many ways in health, like diagnosis and so on. And we also know from your lecture today about over-reliance is an issue with AI, and unequal access is also a problem. So I want to ask for your input on at what point will AI be inaccessible in terms of affordability? Because now with ChatGPT, we still have it very freely available. And now there's some features that you want to access, and it's asking you to pay for it. So at what point will the access become issues in that case? And for our students who we want them not only to be theoretically sound, but we also want them to be very practical in terms of applying what they've learned in class. And if they enhance their learning through AI, how do they then become safe when they need to deliver in clinical practice? Is there any way we can detect any misuse of AI in our students so that we can guide them on the right path to learning? Thank you.
Thank you. Really good questions, by the way. I think time show us, like from former like revolution, there is always like an economical dynamic where the more we develop, the more like the access will be greatly higher. It's like the web. The first computers, for example, was limited to, military use, and then it got like in the hands of university who can afford it. And now everybody, including myself, we have this type of devices simply because with time, like there is economical incentive for private sector to make it more accessible. And then it ended up like into a model where it's somehow accessible to pretty much any person. And I think the same, let's say, trend is happening in AI already. Just to give you a sense, I sense personally, I have no evidence on that, but the cost of one user for ChatGPT, like a premium one, which is $23 USD, the cost for the user is higher than what the user is paying. So many AI companies now, they are somehow investing to collect the data and to be able to build systems that are more accessible and in a wider thing. Not simply for the sake of humanity, but also like this is the business model. So they will at a certain moment have millions, they already have millions of users and probably like billions. Regarding the safety and security, I think something super important to always mention. All the AI systems that we use today, they are what we call a probabilistic systems. In the end of the day, it's a mathematical equation that every time it's getting like executed to generate like token by token. So the AI of today has no reasoning. It's only a really good machine that takes information and provides you like another information. So there is no systematic way to have an accurate results. But we should not also forget that even as a human, we do mistakes. I think we are a little bit too hard on the AI itself, but we do mistakes. But the whole idea is we want to build systems that are better than us. And I feel there is a potential to do it in the future. And there is more and more of researchers like investing on what we call AI alignment and also like AI safety. And today, maybe, especially on healthcare, it's a very sensitive like type of impact. So we do not have like necessarily like risky systems like allowed, but probably in 5 years, when we see like sort of stability of the AI results, we will probably like accept this type of risk because it will give access to people to this kind of health systems. Any other question? Yes, for sure. So I have here 6 questions that I go quickly on that. So the question number 1, how do you think AI system can be designed to stimulate critical thinking rather than replacing it? This is, I don't know who asked this question, but this is a really good question, by the way. The biggest risk, personally, I see as an AI practitioner is this kind of, I call it mental laziness, that I observe it even on myself. By the way, when I prepared like the presentation, I use a ChatGPT I use a ChatGPT on some brainstorming. So, on some structure and all. And I felt after a few hours of use that I start to be somehow dependent on that. And I think this is a big risk. I have the chance to witness like a world within AI, without AI, and a world with AI. My real concern is my daughter. She will grow up in a world where the only definition of any system is an AI system. How she gonna develop critical thinking? How she can avoid jumping into ChatGPT to get the response and making that mental effort to try to seek and look for the information? I think this is a big, big challenge. Any person working on education, I think it should be like a major like topic and a major concern. So I think probably today what I suggest, first of all, I believe that this new capability will not replace any domain. Like, I will always advise my daughter to follow the same school curriculum because she needs to understand the fundamentals of mathematics, of physics, of language. So the idea of, oh, AI will replace it. No, it will not. It will enable you. And the second topic is, I think, there is a lot of work to, especially on education, on how to help like people to balance that use. On the second question is, how will artificial intelligence reshape our understanding of human learning? Will there be a convergence or around with, will there be a convergence, and if so, around which concept of learning? And I think it's again the same topic. The AI, I think, today will probably replace the process of seeking information. In the past, my mom, my dad, they have to go to a library, look for, browse different books to find the information. I grew up with Google and Yahoo at the time. So the system provided me somehow the resources. And today, what we are moving from the search engine to what we call the answer engine, which is ChatGPT and Perplexity that give you the right way what you need. The whole idea is, again, to rebuild a balance between how we maintain our curiosity, our strength as a human, but how to leverage that tool to have it coexisting in our life. On the second question is, why early stage of development was based on open source resources and fundamental sharing of knowledge, it seems to like the actual era is focused on established IP. I agree and disagree in the same time. We can see like major models now, they are owned by the private sectors. But still, most of the knowledge is open source. Something unique happened in the AI industry. It's one of the very few industries in the world where most of like the privately developed research, they are publicly available. The models of DeepMind, they're available. The models of OpenAI, they're available. So I think there is already a good habit of sharing the knowledge, but for sure companies has to keep like an IP on what they build and what they invest in. The second question, can you please tell us the challenge faced with respect to financing these businesses? Many senior lenders will be worried with this type of business. This is true, and I'm facing that as I'm closing my funding round, by the way. So I think there is a sort of a curve where investors, they are getting inspired from former investors who invested early on Google, on Microsoft and all, and they don't want to miss like the boat this time with AI. So there is already like some of learning on risk profiling and risk management. And I think that this comfort is getting like quicker like to most of like the industry. I will finish with one last question here. You highlighted the role of subject matter expert in making AI useful and relevant. How do you see SMEs, like subject matter experts, collaborating with AI engineers in practice, especially in fields with strict regulation like healthcare and education? This is an excellent last question, by the way. Today there is tools that help like crystallizing general type of information into like instructions and what we call prompts and all. There is no systematic way to initiate like major changes like healthcare, for example. We need like change of regulations. There is big debate now, should we take more risk and make it more accessible or do the reverse? So there is no systematic way. However, the good thing, the way like domain knowledge, like they can contribute, they can basically help private sectors like companies providing their knowledge. Like if you think like companies like OpenAI, they hired a lot of like expert in finance, for example, to help them to train their AI models to provide a better financial literacy to the user and many more. But also AI today, it allows you to create your first prototype super quickly. Yesterday we had this conversation where someone had an idea about like HR, for example. And the best advice for me is there is tools now within few hours with no IT expertise, you can at least prototype something quick. You can go see like other potential user and validate that knowledge and all. So we have that, let's say, benefits that AI system bring to allow any specialist, any student to unleash the potential of their knowledge faster, easier, and in a better scale. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Merai, for this insightful and thought-provoking keynote.